Hello, and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision making to try to figure out what keeps us stuck, and more importantly, how do we get unstuck? I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today, I have the extreme pleasure of talking with Stephen Bradley. Stephen is an Amazon best-selling author and nationally recognized expert in law enforcement's response to intimate partner violence, stalking, and technology abuse. A former FBI cybercrime investigator, he has led international trainings for over 28 years and consults with courts, law enforcement, and legal professionals. Stephen now serves with Our Family Wizard, promoting safe, technology-supported communication for separated families. His work bridges the gap between investigative practice and trauma-informed approaches, helping communities respond more effectively to domestic violence and digital threats in legal settings. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Karen. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have this conversation. I know you and I met a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month or so ago. And when you started telling me what you did, I was just exploding because I knew I had to have you on this podcast. What you do is so, so important. But let's start with cybercrime, cyber stalking, cyber everything. What does any of that have to do with divorce?
Well, it's funny you ask. It was great meeting you. I'm glad we have this opportunity to sit down and have this conversation. So, when cyber crimes, we talk about divorce, especially, divorces are typically contentious anyway. Some can be amicable, but sometimes they're very contentious. When it comes to cyber related crimes, whether it's divorce or not, there is a global theme of mental health. Meaning, she's crazy. He's crazy. There's no way possibly I could do that. I can't listen to her phones. I can't change her thermostat. That's something they saw on TV. Well, that's not necessarily true. Let's think about divorce. Let's think about domestic abuse. We've all played that 20 questions game when we first started dating. What's your favorite color? What high school did you go to? What's your favorite type of music? What are those? Those are answers to security questions. Because I know so much information about you, you can change your password to your accounts, but I may be able to get access to your accounts just because I can answer your security questions. So it's not a mental health crisis, but that's what's often made out to think. On the flip side, the offender side or the bad actor, I want everybody to understand that out of working with thousands of offenders worldwide, less than 10% have any kind of computer background at all. These are not computer experts. These are not Best Buy Geek Squad members. These are what we call keyboard warriors. They simply Google, how do I stalk my partner? There's YouTube videos. There's places like Reddit you can go to get all types of resources. So don't think for a second we're dealing with any type of a smarter class. They just Google it.
Whoa. I am so glad you said that because so many people, if I ask them about their spouse and how tech savvy are they, they're like, oh, he can't figure out anything, or she doesn't know what's going on, or blah, blah, blah. But I've had so many clients over the years who have said things like, he knows where I am. Like I swear he's following me somehow. I don't see a car. But is that a thing? And how can, if somebody thinks that they are being followed or cyber stalked, I guess you would call it, what do they do?
Well, that's a good point. A lot of people automatically default to GPS or air tags or tiles or some type of a tracker. But the one thing that people forget about is our cell phones. We take our cell phones everywhere we go. We take them to the bathroom. What better way to track somebody than through a cell phone? And before we get to the cell phone, be honest with you, the number one tracker, especially in family cases, is not even a tracker or a phone at all. It's your AirPods. It's your Bluetooth headphones.
What?
If you open your purse and you find an Apple AirTag inside your purse, you know somebody's tracking your locations. But if you open your purse and you find my headphones in your purse that have a Find My feature, babe, I've been looking everywhere for my headphones, not my tracker. So again, it's very inconspicuous. But getting back to the phone, that's the fun part. There's all types of technologies and softwares out there, again, that they find on Google or YouTube that allows you to clone somebody's phone. So you get exact access, everything they receive, everything they do, you get access on your phone or on your desktop, wherever they go, anywhere in the world. You can activate their microphone and listen to their surroundings. Because I know, Karen, I know you've had clients tell you they're listening to me. They know my conversations. I can
Yep.
turn on your camera. I can see your surroundings. I can read all your text messages, emails.
Wait. You're blowing me away here. You can turn on my camera to my phone?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny that you say that because a couple of years ago, Apple first responded to this and they did a bad job, in my opinion, of letting the public know what they were for. So if you remember, we started seeing these colored dots in the right hand corner of our screen. There's a green dot for your microphone and an orange dot for green's for your camera, orange is for your microphone. So if you're on your phone, you'll notice that there's a dot on. Well, if I just touch my phone to check the time and my microphone dot's on, somebody's listening to my communications. So that's one way they can combat and let you know. But again, they did a horrible job of letting the general public know what those actually meant. But yes, I can actually do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if somebody, because I know I've been in court so many times where it's a he said, she said, and one person's trying to make the other one look bad or look, to your point, look crazy, especially the person who maybe is a little crazy. They're always interested in making the other person look worse. So if somebody's thinking, he knows where I'm at, he or she knows where I'm at, they know my conversations, they always seem to be one step ahead of me.
Correct.
What's the first thing that they should do to try to figure this out and combat that and take their life back?
So the program I just mentioned is called cell phone spyware, and it costs a whopping $7. It's not very expensive, and in some cases it can be free, depending on what company. There's several companies that do this. So when I tell people, when I have a client come to me and they say, you know what, he's listening to me, he follows me or she follows me, they're always at the Walmart, the park, they always show up where I am, they know my conversations. I say, okay, let's look at your cell phone bill. What we want to look at is the data usage. We want to go back about 4 or 5 months and look at the data used today. If there's spyware on your phone, your data is going to significantly increase. It may double in some cases because every time you send me a message, it's sending a duplicate message to the bad guy. So you're working twice as hard. Have conversations about battery life. Does your battery need to be charged more often? Well, yeah, it used to last all day. Now by lunchtime, I got to plug my phone in. Well, because your phone, again, is working twice as hard. We've all been in that long phone call where our phone's been kind of warm to touch afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, if I pick up my phone off the desk and my phone's warm to touch, I haven't been on it, but somebody may have been going through my programs, my files, my photographs, or simply just listen to my conversation through my microphone. So there's all kinds of things we can actually look at when it comes to that. If you do suspect spyware on your phone or you're in a situation like this, there's a couple of ways that you can combat this or kind of help out. But there's a couple of, let me give you both sides of this. So you can go to your cell phone carrier, Verizon, T-Mobile, whoever you use. Their techs are very knowledgeable and are very versed in spyware. They can actually scan your phone and they can go through your cloud and make sure there's nothing in there to keep you safe. If they do find something, I highly suggest that you actually gather that information before it's deleted for evidence purposes, in case you may have a criminal case for cyberstalking or all kinds of other things we can talk about later. But they can actually remove that. But this is the caveat to that. If you're in a situation that may be abusive and you know that there's spyware on there and he sees that you go to Verizon, because again, he's tracking your locations and now he can no longer track you, that's when abuse can escalate. So there are some programs at home that allows your apps you can download to identify and remove spyware. One of the antivirus, anti-malware companies out there is called Avast, A-V-A-S-T. And I have no affiliation with them at all, but they have a free spyware scanner and remover tool. There are other programs like Certo and things like that are paid apps, like $5 a month, and they will monitor your device. But again, I have no relationship with them at all. But find one that's good for you or your situation or your scenario. Because again, we know privacy is safety, and you may not be able to go to the phone store. You can do a factory reset on your phone, but this is where everybody it's a slippery slope. If you connect that phone to the same iCloud, the same email address, it's automatically going to reinstall. You have to painstakingly manually input all your information all over again. I've had victims bring me brand new cell phones, Ziploc baggies full of brand new phones. You can't simply just get a new phone because what does the cell phone company do? As soon as you get a new phone, they want to transfer all your information to your new phone to help you out. All they're doing is transferring the spyware just to that new phone as well. So it's a circle, a vicious circle that never goes away. So the best way is to identify it and just have the professionals remove it.
Wow. That is you're blowing my mind. You really are, especially because my gut reaction would have been, we'll just go get a new phone. But clearly that doesn't help the problem. Is it ever a good idea to get like a new phone, but keep it totally separate, like new number, new phone, new everything?
And I have a lot of clients that do that. They'll go get a burner phone, a prepaid phone, or it's just a separate phone, and they don't mix them together. Send no different email addresses, different iClouds, and that's okay because, as in theory, that device is a clean device. So yes, you can do that, but it's a pain to carry around two devices as well. If
Yes.
you do have a device that you suspect spyware is on, or someone's listening to you, and you want to have a private, confidential conversation. So I'm going to come into your office, Karen, and we're going to have this private, confidential, privileged conversation about my situation. And I suspect and I think that my spouse is listening to me or my partner is listening to me. What can you do? How can you have that? We're not going to tell them to leave the phone in the car because one, they may have Ubered there, or two, that may be their only sense of security. This is my blankie, my passy, my whoopee. This is what keeps me safe. So we're going to bring it in there. But again, this is what they're tracking. This is what they're listening to. So a lot of people will automatically assume that you can just turn the phone off. We're just going to turn the phone off and we'll be fine. Well, unfortunately, today, when you turn your phone off, your phone is still on. That's why they took away the ability to remove the batteries from your phones. That's why they're all one unit now. It runs in what's called Q mode. The best way to actually have a private, confidential conversation is to put your phone in airplane mode. It turns off every single antenna on your phone. Yes, you can turn on your Bluetooth, you can turn on your Wi-Fi, but as a whole, it turns everything off. So make sure that everything's off, and then you can have that private, confidential conversation. And then you can turn it back on as soon as you leave. You don't have to wait for your phone to boot back up, but it keeps you safe.
What about, and this is very rudimentary, but this is going to show you my level of knowledge about this stuff. What if you just like cover the microphone? Like I know a lot of people have cell phone holders where they'll cover the microphone. Does that work?
Not really, because unfortunately, the microphones and technology, so technology is a dual edged sword. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Sometimes it can be both. But the microphones and cameras are so sensitive today, they can pick up, muted noises and things like that. So I would just suggest throwing it into airplane mode and have your conversation. The follow up to that is because I get asked a lot of these questions is, well, can I just leave my phone in airplane mode? No, you can't, because unfortunately, it's a brick. If you leave your phone in airplane mode, it won't work because it turned off every single antenna. So you can't do that. It's a
Oh,
moment in time. So it's while you're there having that private conversation or your locations you want to turn off, whatever. That's where it is. Turn it on and then turn it right back off. So that way you have that moment in time of safety.
wow. So it sounds to me, I don't know, I'm thinking like a lawyer here, right? So if a client
Absolutely.
comes into me and we're having a conversation, that seems to me like it would be a decent question to ask in the beginning and have, because the client might not know this, might not think about it. It might be something for a lawyer to say, hey, why don't you turn your cell phone in airplane mode?
Right. Every time I do an interview, to your point, every time it's whether criminal or civil, it doesn't matter. I always pretty much start the same way. What you're about to tell me is very important. I want to stay between you and I. I'm going to put my phone in airplane mode and I ask you to do the same thing. I've never been told no. But if they question you, just say, hey, Siri or hey, Google, and watch it pop up. I don't even want Siri to be able to hear us. So we're just going to disable that feature so nobody, not even Siri, can listen to us. And again, I've never been told no. And then I can confidently start my interview with that individual and know that it's going to be confidential and safe.
I love that. That is amazing. But now let's talk about the intersection of cybersecurity and having safe conversations and our family wizard, because I know you work with them now. eh, Why our family wizard? What does it do that I can't do myself?
It's funny. And I get that question a lot. How do you go from a law enforcement agency to a co-parenting tool, co-parenting app? Well, we know that divorce is contentious. And I do talk so much about negative technologies, as we just did with like spyware and locations and communication. Well, our family wizard actually combats a lot of those things we see in courts today. Today, there are several free apps and websites you can go to change and manipulate communication. I can change caller ID. I can even change the text message. I can create fake text messages, print them off, and bring them to the lawyer or the judge as if it was what actually happened. I can have them time delayed. Well, our family wizard has a messaging system too, but it's a closed system, which means there's no outside influence. You can't use a special app. You can't do anything. So you know 100% that the communication is authentic. It's 100% real. It's accurate. One of the things, as you know, as a lawyer, is accuracy is one of the most important things in courts. We have to be able to discern whether this evidence is real, whether this communication is real. This tool allows us to do that and be assured that everything from the calendar to the financial transactions to even like the homeroom teacher in the info bank or the pant size, shirt size, belt size of the child is all in one location. We also today have concerns with AI, artificial intelligence, and we see things on the media and TV shows about deep fakes where I can put your face on top of my face and make a phone call or a FaceTime or use your voice. Well, within our family wizard, we have a voice and video feature as well. So you can have a FaceTime call and know that the person you're talking to is actually the person. So if you're
Oh,
having virtual parenting time, you know it's the child. It's not the parent pretending to be a child.
oh, don't even, I never even thought of that. You mean
Absolutely.
a parent? Okay, my mind's blown here. A parent
Absolutely.
could sit here and be FaceTiming with who they think is their child, but it's really the other parent who's got the technology that makes them look and sound like their kid?
Absolutely. I can actually right now I can transpose your face on top of my face and I can become you. We can role reverse in this interview right now and I can become you. Change my voice to your voice and everything.
No, you
That's
you could do that right now?
well, yeah, it would take me a minute to set that up, but yes, we could actually do that if we prepared for that. But yes, that is the technology available today, unfortunately. These programs are readily available. So there's been situations where, for example, a batterer's intervention course, where it's a domestic abuse situation where a gentleman was ordered to 52 weeks of batterer's intervention courses. Well, it was her fault, of course, that he had to go in the first place. So he
Of course.
transposed his face on top of her face and made her sit through the classes because it was her fault. So that's how this stuff became more aware or brought more awareness to the court system and to the legal system as to how offenders are using this technology. So we, our family wizard, we want to eliminate that. We want to make sure it's a closed system, voice, video. You can get transcripts if you want to. So we know virtual parenting time is a real thing today.
Oh, yeah, for sure it is. But I've got another question. I mean,
Sure.
the lawyer in me, you're like waking up the lawyer in me for sure. So
Absolutely.
let's say I have a client who suspects that something like this is happening, that their ex or their spouse is using technology to mess with them. We'll just put it that way. As a lawyer, how can I prove or disprove that? Do I have to get their phone? Do I have to, like, how can I tell if it's real or it's fake?
Unfortunately, this is where it kind of, you have to involve an expert because you're right. It's hard to tell today because these programs are so good, but you have to examine the metadata. You have to examine a lot of different a lot of different features of the phone, possibly the communication, the email headers to make sure that the IP addresses line up and it's not coming from and going to the same IP address. There's a lot that experts can do in that case. And fortunately or unfortunately, fortunately because I'm an expert, but unfortunately for some of the clients, because I know that financial decisions weigh heavily on that. Is these things are getting so complicated. You're almost going to need an expert today to do some of this stuff for like AI or deep fakes or to be able to
Right.
prove. I mean, universities today are having a hard time reading term papers to see if a term paper is legitimate or if ChatGPT created it. So just imagine that on a bigger scale for evidentiary, or you're making a big decision on custody of the children, who owns the home, whatever the case may be. So when you have skin in the game, when you have something to lose, sometimes these offenders will stop at nothing to try to manipulate the case.
Wow. That's that's crazy. And I can see how OFW, because it's a closed system, would prevent that. But let me tell you, so when I'm talking to people, a lot of times what I hear is, oh, we get along fine. I don't need it. So
Right.
what do you say about that?
Well, and then we hear that a lot too is, well, we'll just use a Google Calendar. We'll just use
Right.
text messages, things like that. But again, it goes back to the point where these can be deleted, they can be manipulated. With our family wizard, from the day that you sign up to the day that, forever and ever, actually, your information is going to be there. We know that divorces, especially, kind of ebb and flow. Sometimes you make it 6 months in, you're like, this is too expensive. This is damaging the kids. Let's just get back together. We'll try to figure it out. And then 6 months later, you hate each other again. You will go through the process. Well, our family wizard allows you to come back 6 months later as if you never left. Your information is all there. Nothing is deleted. No communication, no calendaring. It's all still there. So Google Calendar won't do that. Your messages, again, I can delete, I can manipulate, I can spoof regular communications. So why take the risk? Why take the risk in using a free tool when this tool ensures accountability, speeds up litigation, and actually promotes healthy communication? We have a feature called Tone Meter AI. And I know I talked a little bit about negative about AI, but this is a good positive AI. So when you write a message, I hate your guts, it's going to pop up and say, you might want to say this instead. This sounds a little bit better. We say all the time that we're for the children, not for the conflict. We're here for the kids. We want to make sure the kids have healthy, parents that can communicate and get through this with as least harm as possible. So that's why it's important.
Yeah, no, I've been a big fan of OFW forever. I mean, as long as you guys have been around and I've been doing this, and both of those are a long time.
I understand.
And so and that tonometer is a big deal because a lot of times when my clients are caught in the moment, you might not realize like how
Absolutely.
off what you're saying is, or how it could be taken in a different way. Because that's the other problem with technology, especially in texting, when you can't hear a voice and see, pick up visual cues on somebody, things can sound differently than how you meant them.
Correct, correct. And that's just it. It can be passive aggressive. It can be, there's no tone. We don't know what the tone is. And you're just saying, because you're so upset with each other, I know what they meant by that. I know what that was supposed to be. That was, whatever. This kind of takes that out of it. It stops the he said, she said, or the back and forth. It kind of mitigates that, and again, promotes healthy communication.
Okay. So I want to pause for a moment, and go back to something that you mentioned
Sure.
before when you talked about metadata, because before we started this, you were talking about how you can look at metadata to see if something is real or not, and how people can even manipulate pictures and that kind of thing. Like, if you send me, if I, as a lawyer, if a client sends me a picture of, oh, here's what my spouse, he says he can't walk and he just climbed a mountain, and here's the picture and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, how can I know if the picture is real or not?
So there's different ways to look at metadata, and metadata is very important. So there's metadata, EXIF data. They're pretty much universal, kind of go back and forth. So to give a quick history lesson, it really started with the photography industry, where these digital cameras came on the scene, and they really wanted to embed inside a photograph what the shutter speed was, what kind of film was used, what kind of camera was used, so that it kind of gives a record of that photograph or that artwork, if you will. Well, that's kind of expounded to our cell phones, to pretty much every camera today. A $20 digital camera from Walmart can actually possibly have metadata built inside it. So where this really comes into play, and again, this is not a good point for our family wizard. So in these divorce cases, you may be willing to share, or you may be ordered from the courts to share, photographs of a birthday, a graduation, some type of a momentous, milestone in your child's life. Well, you also may be in a situation where privacy is needed. Privacy is safety. You may be in a confidential domestic violence shelter. You may be staying at a friend's house, a sister's house. You don't want your co-parent knowing where you live. But if you send them a photograph of your child's birthday inside that location, inside that photograph is the metadata that includes the locations of where you were. I simply take that, put it into Google Maps or Google Earth, and I get a map to where you are. So that's where this becomes harmful. Our Family Wizard, when you share photographs through our journal programs like social media, we scrub the metadata because we know privacy is safety. We know that where you when you want to tell your parent where you want to be, that's when you're going to tell them. They shouldn't be able to get it through a technology platform or program. So to answer you, go back to your first point. How do we find this metadata? There's programs out there. There's metadata in Exadata type programs, but you can simply just take a photograph, save it to your desktop, or even on your phone. If you're on your desktop, you just right click on it, and then click on information or properties. And it's going to pop up. It's going to show you an iPhone. It's going to show you all the metadata inside that. Your phone, if you have a photograph in your phone gallery, just swipe up from it and you'll see the metadata below as to the location, the date and time stamp, all those things
Wait,
inside
wait,
there.
wait. Sorry, I'm just
It's
like I'm
okay. It's
exploding here.
okay. It's a lot of
So,
information. Yeah.
so the metadata, does it actually give you like city, state, street, address, or is it somehow encrypted or coded or
It depends on the device. Most of our cell phones will actually give you the actual address of where you were. Most of them are latitude and longitude coordinates. So that's where you take the latitude and longitude and you just put it into Google Earth, or Google Maps, and it actually will translate it for you, and show you again straight view, map to your house, what car is sitting in the driveway. So that's how people find that. The tools that are out there, the metadata tools, they're a little bit more, you get a lot more information. It's more exclusive for finding certain things. And most of your private investigators or investigators in general will use those type of tools. But the layman person can just right click on it or swipe up and see it.
wow.
So
Okay.
going back to that point, I guess I can continue this. I can talk forever. Sorry.
No, this is awesome.
If you are in a situation where you are sharing photographs, either through a text message or social media or whatever you use, go into your camera settings, even if it's not just your phone or your regular DSLR, camcorder, whatever kind of video or camera device you're using, and turn off the locations inside the settings. So that way your phone, or your camera does not actually record your locations. So you can still send a photograph, but they're not going to know where you are. And that's the key point there.
Wow. I didn't even know. I didn't know any of this. Okay. I'll just put that out there. I didn't know any of this.
I understand.
But so let's talk for a minute at the intersection of where this stuff becomes a crime, right? Like if you think that your spouse or ex or anybody is stalking you, can you just go to the police?
So that's actually very interesting. So in a perfect world, yes, you can. But what I find, even a former law enforcement officer as myself, that a lot of agencies and law enforcement officers don't understand the cyberstalking statute themselves. And these laws are nothing new. They first came on scene. I think California first law was in 2008, and the rest of the country adopted it usually about 2012. And the burden, so people have this preconceived notion for stalking. I have to physically follow you somewhere. I have to follow you from the bar to home or your office somewhere. And I have to be this like creeper making like threats. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But that's not so. So the statute is very specific. In most states, the same or similar language is in all 50 states, where the burden for cyber stalking is substantial emotional distress. That's it. Define that for me. Because you may love spiders and I hate spiders. They cause me substantial emotional distress. But if I can articulate and document what's called a course of conduct, which is usually 2 or more events. So I got friend requests, I'm getting text messages, I'm getting some type of course of conduct, 2 or more events of something that's causing me sleepless nights, emotional distress, which again is different for every individual out there. You may have enough for a cyber stalking case. If there are threats or credible threats associated, now you may have a felony, cyber stalking case. So most cyber stalking, this is why I say a lot of agencies kind of miss this, is it's some parts it's a misdemeanor. It's not a big deal. But there are cases where that quickly turns into a felony. Also, the law is very broad where it's not just you. Let's just say that you start dating someone new. You get a new boyfriend or a new girlfriend, and I make threats to them. I go on Facebook and say, I'm going to kick their butt. Guess what? I'm now cyberstalked. Making threats against another individual can be cyberstalking. I go on this rant on again on social media, on Facebook, wherever. My wife or my husband's the biggest piece of trash, blah, 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 blah. Defaming another person is also cyberstalking. So the law is very, very broad. So people don't get tunnel vision when it comes to cyberstalking. So yes, you may have a criminal case to go along with your divorce case or whatever case you're involved in.
Whoa. Okay, so, but here's the question, because you said in a perfect world. And the reason that I'm asking this question is because I happen to know someone, friend of a friend, who was the victim of cyber stalking to a level that I had no idea somebody could do. Like they
Right.
were turning off, on and off the thermostat, the security cameras that were for the
Absolutely.
house were actually turned and watching the people in the house, not the people out of the house. The level was, and it was making this person crazy. And it wasn't necessarily even in, a domestic violence. That it wasn't that kind of situation, but it was very real. And
Mm-hmm.
the person went to the police, and basically the police were like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, there's nothing we can do."
And unfortunately, I hear that a lot, and it's very frustrating for myself and several other, law enforcement officers that do what I do and really understand the statutes. So I hear stuff like, "Well, we don't have no jurisdiction on the World Wide Web." Well, yes, you do. There's several state and federal statutes that allows you to do this. Or it's this First Amendment rights. It's freedom of speech. They can say what they want to say. No, that's not true either, because we have laws for defamation and things like that. That's why we have them. So that's where it gets frustrating, but it's not necessarily their fault. And I say this loosely because most of them don't get the training in it. They go to the police academy and they have to learn how to be a police officer in one 5-inch 3-ring binder and tell them everything about the world. And that's not so. I mean, even domestic violence or domestic abuse, it's usually one paragraph inside this textbook of stuff. Well, we know domestic abuse is huge. There's so many caveats to it. We talk about the difference between like family law and domestic abuse and the intersect and the parallel, because they're very, very similar in divorce cases and these domestic abuse cases, because all the tools and tactics are the same. One may be abusive, one's not. So there's a lot of parallels there. In family, divorces, domestic, things like that, is there a lot of unknowns. People are volatile, people are different. When you take away my kids, whatever, most criminal courts, you're a bad guy or you're not. I stole it or I didn't. So they're pretty cut and dry. But family is very, very fluid. So you have to have those tools to be able to understand that. Unfortunately, most agencies, and again, this is world according to Stephen, they focus on the wrong things. I can tell you in my law enforcement career, I've seen 1 kilo of cocaine. I saw domestic abuse or family law or family situations every single day. But they focus on chasing drugs or whatever, which is a horrible problem. Fentanyl is a horrible problem. And I'm not trying to minimize that by no means. But if we had more people focus on these type of situations and really understand it, I think there'd be a lot more accountability held against these offenders, because they do get away with that, unfortunately.
Yeah, but and in defense of the police force too, I remember years ago back in the day, I did a ride along in New York City with the cops.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always the domestic violence cases when they get the domestic call that they were most concerned about, because that's where they got shot. That's where things happen that shouldn't. That's where good people did really bad things.
Exactly
Um,
correct.
and there were a lot of them. I mean, to your point, if you compared the number of like, drug cases, or we think somebody's got drugs, to how many people are beating on each other, domestic violence wins hands down, and that's not a contest anyone wants to win.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's what. So we talk about like the stats behind it. Even that's a whole different conversation, I know. But I always ask people when I do my classes on domestic abuse and technology is, how many of you know somebody that has cancer, has been affected with cancer, or just say breast cancer, and almost everybody raises their hand. I'm like, okay, the stat on that is 1 in 8. How many of you know somebody's involved in domestic violence situation? Crickets. Maybe one or two people raise their hands. I'm like, why? Because the stat on that is 1 in 3 or 1 in 4. So if you know somebody's involved in cancer, there's a very good chance you know somebody's been involved in domestic abuse. But nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to, it happens behind closed doors. I don't want to assert myself. It's none of my business. There's a true statistic is if you actually kick a dog, you'll get more jail time than if you kick a woman or a man, whatever it may be, because animal cruelty is automatically a felony. Whereas beating your spouse or your partner can be a misdemeanor, it can be a felony, it can be whatever they deem it to be. So that's where the loophole gets, but that's a totally different conversation. So sorry about my tangent, but it is.
No, but I mean it's interesting because I just was last week, I went to a fundraiser for a domestic violence program locally here. And what I found so fascinating about the program was that it was in a nice area. I mean, the
Absolutely.
like people think of domestic violence as being the poorest of the poor, people who aren't educated, people who don't know any better. I have to tell you, that is not what I saw during that program. These were wealthy, educated, very well appointed people.
I can tell you in my career, the worst crime scenes I've ever seen have always been white collar type crime scenes. They've been very affluent, very what you would consider, this is what I want to be. It's what I want to aspire to have, this income, this home, these cars, whatever. Those are the worst crime scenes I've ever seen in my whole career. They assume, like you said, this again misconception of it's just some NASCAR driving or watching drunk on the weekends is beating his wife or whatever it may be. But that again is a huge misconception. It's a lot more. It's happening in your own backyard and you don't even realize it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's wow. All right, let's kind of bring this to a close because I want to be respectful of your time, but I have to tell you, I could sit here for another 2 hours and ask you questions because this is just it's mind-blowing, and I have a feeling that the breadth of the problem um, is way bigger than most people think it is.
It really is. And we can always do some more follow ups too, because again, as you can tell, I'm passionate. I enjoy these conversations. I enjoy what I do and bringing the awareness and bringing the knowledge to your listeners and to so many, because the work's only begun. The work is really, I mean, we talk about technology changes by the day. I mean, you might have got a brand new cell phone as soon as it came out. 2 weeks later it's already out of date. And that's just how fast technology moves. So, and unfortunately, laws cannot keep up with technology as fast as it moves. So this is a constantly evolving topic that we have to talk about and we have to bring awareness to. And the one thing I found, and that's why I started this podcast that way, the one thing I've found is find someone that's going to listen to you. Because again, even a lot of professionals will blow you off as being crazy. This is mental health. There's no way they can do that. They can't change your thermostats. They can't, listen to your Alexa. Yes, sir, can. So, I mean, they can, educate themselves on that as well. So, yeah, it's a fun topic. So I appreciate we actually had this conversation in every facet that we went in. So it's great.
We went a lot of different directions for sure, but I think what I want to just sort of highlight in what you just said too is for people who think that they may be the victim of some sort of cybercrime, um, it makes more sense to prevent what's going to happen, to take, like, for example, to use our family wizard, to use the tools that are available to stay safe in the beginning, because judges are human too. And if you take it to them, I got to tell you, you've got, no offense to my colleagues on the bench, but you've got some 70 or 80-year-old person on the bench who's the judge. To think that they're going to understand all the ins and outs of this is kind of naive.
You're absolutely correct. Technology is very generational, and we do get in those situations where we have an older person on the bench or whatnot. Even not even that is even as professionals like ourselves, we have to meet our clients where they're at. You got to remember, my generation, Generation X, we went to school. We actually had textbooks. My first typewriting class was on a typewriter. We didn't have computers. We didn't have tablets. We didn't have cell phones. We're lucky we got a pager. I mean, that was cool back then. Our first cell phone came in a bag. So we kind of grew with technology. But unfortunately, to your point, some of these people, some of our clients or some of you listening do not have, you're not tech savvy, and you don't have to be. There's professionals out there that can help you. But meet your client where they're at. Meet them. So if it's a millennial or a younger person, yes, they're gonna be more tech savvy, maybe smarter than you. And that's fine. That's why you can hire a professional, Google it. Hey, contact me. It's fine. But we will get you to the point where you need to be. But don't take it for face value.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's the perfect place to call this a wrap. But Stephen, if people are interested in learning more about what you do, if they want to reach out to you, where's the best place that they can find you?
Well, they can always find me at ourfamilywizard.com. Again, that's a platform. They can check out the platform, how it benefits them. If there's in financial hardship situations, there's fee waivers to help them with the cost of the program. But they can also find me on LinkedIn as well. I'm always available on social media. It's the only social media I actually haven't used. So, but yeah, but either way, Our Family Wizard or through LinkedIn, you can reach out that way.
Thank you so much for everything that you've shared here. This has been an eye-opening conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
And for those of you out there who are watching or listening, we will have every place that you can find Stephen linked up in the show notes. Our Family Wizard will be linked up in the show notes. And just one last plug for them. It's really the gold standard platform for co-parenting communication and just organizing your co-parenting life. It will make your life so much easier. I really encourage you to check it out. And for those of you who are watching or who are listening, if you enjoyed today's episode, if you'd like to hear more episodes just like it, do me a favor. Give this a thumbs up, like, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.
Thank you.